How we do this, we are the truest. Got these fangs super sharp, your shit toothless. Cold-hearted, yeah we ruthless. All the ghouls in the cut, let's get ghoulish. In the graveyard, acting foolish. Finna dance with the devil to no music. Cold-hearted, yeah we ruthless. All the ghouls in the cut, let's get ghoulish.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Ghoulish. I am Max Booth, an undead host. That's right, folks. A host who once was alive, now he's dead. What a fucking, I don't know, a problem to have in life, right, folks? You've all been ill. On today's episode, I am talking to Tim Waggoner about movie and novelizations, specifically about his novelization of Halloween Kills, a movie I have seen, and a movie my special co-host has seen, Miguel Myers, who was kind enough to join me as a co-host on this episode with Tim. As far as I know, he is just a living co-host. Is that right, Miguel?
Yes, I'm still living, unless that was the threat.
Now, I've never recorded an intro with someone else listening. How do you think it went?
I think it's going pretty good. You're doing a great job.
I felt like a lunatic at one point because I usually, when I do an intro, I have many false beginnings where I have to stop and delete and do it again. But I don't have that choice right now. So whatever I say, that's what's going to go into the intro. Ask me any question.
What'd you think of Tim Waggoner?
Piece of shit. Tim's a great dude. He's a lot of fun. He knows a lot about writing, which was a topic I didn't even plan on asking him about. So I'm glad that you hit him up with some writing questions, because he's really intelligent when it comes to the craft. He has lots of good things to say about it.
Yeah, it's always great to meet or talk to another horror fan. You can tell he is that. I mean, he told us in the interview, and we're going to hear later, that he saw Halloween 1978 in the theater in its original run. I mean, that's historical right there, and his love of horror just is seen throughout his career. He even wrote a fucking book about how to write horror. So yeah. I mean, it's just great to talk to another fellow horror lover.
Now you've seen Halloween Kills, right?
I've seen it twice, and I plan to see it a couple more times. Yeah.
So you must like it.
You know what? I like it. I don't know how much. I feel like I have to defend it. The way that people have reacted to this movie hasn't given me an opportunity to think about it. You know, like people are just like, if you like this movie, you're the worst kind of human being. It's like, yo, can I
shout out to Zach Chapman?
Shout out to fellow asshole Zach Chapman. Well, it's not just him though; it's on Twitter as well. It's like, I would like to be able to ruminate on the movie and see how I feel, but I can't, because I am automatically put into defense mode because I love this franchise. So
yeah.
So, but I have seen it twice, and I actually enjoyed it slightly more the first time than I did the second time. Or I'm sorry, the second time than I did the first time. And I'm going to watch it again just because, I want to see it on the big screen.
So I went into Halloween Kills. What the fuck was that?
Sorry, my chair it fell down. Go ahead.
Are you okay? Did you fall down?
Yeah, I'm good.
Did you fall? Do you have
no,
hives?
Max, I didn't fall. I'm okay.
Did the hives come back?
I had to take a shower before this, and the hives went away.
Oh, okay. I thought you.
Thank you for the concern.
You took one during the episode.
No, I didn't go use the washroom and get coffee.
That is what I did. So as I was saying, I went into Halloween Kills expecting to like it, mostly because I like the title. I think it's a great title, but I didn't really love it. I didn't like it too much. I don't think I hate it, but I certainly didn't like it. I loved the 2018 one when I saw the premiere, but I rewatched that one recently too, and I didn't like it. I don't know, man. Something about those movies rubbed me wrong. Do you think Tim liked the new one? I couldn't tell. I didn't want to ask him directly because it seems odd, like a rude question. But what was your impression?
Yeah, I thought that he enjoyed the because we were talking about him having to use the script to write it and all that. I feel like he well, first of all, he loves the character. That's obvious.
Big Mike.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not going to allow that. Not on my guest show, Max. But he did like the character, and I think he liked the story. I think he liked the movie. I mean, he saw it, and he didn't. I mean, we know if he doesn't like a movie, he'll say so with Paranormal Activity, right?
Jesus Christ, that man came in with an agenda.
He came in hot.
If you like the Paranormal Activity movies, stay away from this episode because, oh boy, it's not too kind about those movies.
No, but he was real cool to talk to, and
Yeah.
an obvious lover of the franchise.
And obviously, if you haven't seen Halloween Kills, I recommend not listening to this podcast yet, because we do talk about a lot of plot points that would be considered spoilers. So watch the movie, listen to the podcast. Well, honestly, you can probably skip the movie, right, Miguel?
Absolutely not.
So before we get into the episode, please tell folks how to find you online and talk about the podcast that you host, because it's a great podcast and you should promote it.
Oh, thanks, Max. Max has actually been on my podcast. It's called My Horror Confessional, and what I do is I have people come on who haven't seen a classic horror movie, and for the purposes of the show, a classic horror movie is any movie that's at least 20 years old. And they'll watch it beforehand, and they come on the show, and we talk about that movie, and we talk about their history with horror and all that sort of stuff, and we just geek out on horror. It's a great time. Once again, that's My Horror Confessional. That's on all the platforms: Spotify, Apple, Google, all that sort of stuff. You can find me. I'm Miguel Myers, Miguel_Myers _ATX at on Twitter, and then in my bio is all my links to My Horror Confessional.
Sweet. Well, enough about you, Miguel. Let's talk to Tim about Paranormal Activity.
Hi, Tim. How's it going? Nice to meet you.
Oh, same here. Going just fine. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Really excited to be on this call. Thanks, Max.
Oh, thank you. I had to invite Miguel on because he is the biggest Halloween fan I know. So it would have been blasphemy if he wasn't involved in this conversation somehow. I mean, to begin with, Miguel, please tell Tim about the Halloween room you have in your house. It's quite the site.
First, I just want to let you know, Tim, I'm not an asshole about it. I know that I'm over the top with my fandom, but I do have in my office. I have it decked out in Halloween posters and figurines and comic books and the novelizations, the previous ones. And DVDs and stuff like that. And I even have tattoos. I unplugged it for this call, but I have the inflatable Michael Myers that came out this year. So I just have that running in my office.
Very cool.
Because I pay the electricity bill. My wife doesn't see it.
Have you always been a Halloween fan, Tim?
Yeah, I saw the original in the theater when it came out. I was probably 15, maybe, something like that. 14. I was 14 when it came out. So, yeah, and I don't know if I've seen all of them in the theater since then. Maybe not number 6, but I've seen, and maybe not the one that was like Resurrection, the one in the reality show in the house. I think maybe I didn't see that in the theater. But I've seen them all, and all of them I've seen multiple times, so own them all.
Up until the most recent ones with Blumhouse, I think Resurrection was the only one I saw in a theater. Great time.
Wow.
Yeah. What about you, Miguel?
Part 6, the one Tim said he hasn't seen. That was the first one I saw in theaters, and then after that, I've seen every single one. I did have a question for you, though, Tim.
Mhm.
So you said you saw Halloween in original, the original Halloween that came out. Do you remember anything about that experience?
Oh, sure. I remember it really well. It was back then, intense slasher movies or intense horror was something I hadn't experienced. And I went with my sister's then boyfriend. And, I was just scared. And we were right behind, some really young girls that screamed at everything. And it just turned into kind of like enjoying it almost like a roller coaster ride at that point. So it really shifted, how I viewed those kind of movies and the experiences that I had. Yeah, but I remember it really well. I remember the tension. I remember everything.
Yeah, jealous, really jealous.
Yeah, it was very cool. And then remember seeing the second one in the same theater going, this is okay. It's not exactly the same, but that's all right.
Something changed.
Yeah, it's just not as stylish and suspensey as the first one was.
Thankfully, they would fix things with Nemil 3.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I know that Halloween originally came out in just a couple theaters and then expanded, when it got more word of mouth and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point after the movie came out did you see it? Was it when that word of mouth hit the street and everybody was talking about it, or was it when it was a little bit of a smaller movie?
That's a good question. I don't quite remember because there was in the town next to where I lived, there was a small theater that just had it showed one movie per week. And I don't think it was second run. These days it would be a second run theater, I think. But the movies were relatively current, but just one a week. So, we would go to whatever was playing. It didn't matter what the movie was. We'd go see it there. And so, I was aware of what Halloween was in general, that it was a scary. Wouldn't have thought of it as a slasher flick because really that wasn't even the terminology back then. It was just a scary movie, about a killer. And there wasn't I don't remember there being a ton of hype about it other than everybody talking about how scary it was. But I read Fangoria back then too and stuff, so.
Were they
I'm
talking
sure
it up back then, Fango?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they were.
Any other questions about this topic, Miguel, before we move on?
I could talk Tim's ear off, but no, we can move on.
We will refilm the Halloween, absolutely. So the intention of this episode is to kind of walk through your career writing novelizations and talking about how you got into the business. So to begin with, I would love to know how you started writing these novelizations, because you've put out quite a few.
Yeah, I've done 4 of them now. I had started years ago, not only writing original stuff, but I was interested in trying to get into writing tie-ins too, because I just grew up reading them. Back VCRs didn't even exist until I was probably 18 or 19. So when I was a teenager, if you wanted to relive films, it would take we didn't have cable, so it might have taken a year before they'd show up on network TV if they did. And if they did show up, it'd be all cut to hell. So, if you wanted to relive a movie, you'd read the novelization of it. And they were always cool because they'd have alternate scenes or, there were no DVDs with special features or whatever. So that was kind of what those books were like too, because they'd have extra scenes and different things in them. Yeah. So I just really, enjoyed the idea of being able to play in other people's worlds. So I kind of did sort of a parallel, career building, doing my own stuff, but at the same time trying to do tie-ins. And as the years went by, I managed to kind of do a few tie-ins here or there. And then eventually I kind of hit up Titan Books to see if I could do a supernatural tie-in for them. And they didn't have anything at the time, but they said they'd let me know. And somebody dropped out for whatever reasons of doing a tie-in, and they needed to fill a slot, and they asked me. And so then I did 3 of those for them. And when it came time for, I think the first novelization I did was for Resident Evil, the final chapter, because I'd already written tie-ins for them. They asked me to do it. And so all 4 of them I've done have been for Titan Books, and, they've all approached me. They approached me about a couple others that didn't work out, that other people ended up doing for whatever reasons, but it's all been Titan Books.
When you reached out about Supernatural, what was it about that show specifically that you wanted to write, Phil? The fact that most of the episodes were like Monster of the Week, so it would give you kind of like a standalone premise? Or what was it about that show specifically?
Well, I grew up watching Kolchak the Night Stalker, which is, the reporter that goes out and battles monsters. So I love the idea of the kind of supernatural detective or supernatural hero that fights monsters. But I also, when I was watching the series, I really enjoyed the relationship between the two brothers. I liked the fact that, they had each other's backs all the time, even though they had this kind of conflict, which I thought made them really rich characters. And I liked the Monster of the Week stuff more than their overarching kind of plots that they would have, especially in the later seasons, because it's ridiculous to think that these characters can go up against God and somehow survive. Or if they can do that, then the next week they're going to be bothered by a couple ghouls that are trying to eat them. They should be able to just plow through those guys. So just writing, the Monster of the Week was really appealing, because that way I could kind of ignore the fact, that they have an angel for a best friend that's, basically like, Angel Superman that can get him out of any kind of trouble, and just kind of focus on them as guys that hunt monsters.
Okay. Do you, to quickly go back to Halloween, do you think Michael Myers could take on God?
I don't know. Maybe Michael Myers is God. We don't know. We don't know what Michael is.
I think to Miguel, he is God, definitely.
He can be the Messiah of the new age.
I want you to know how big my eyes got when you said maybe Michael Myers is God. He's definitely a god of something. I mean, if we were to go through like the Thorn timeline, he's probably if they kept going there, he'd probably be a demigod, something at this point.
Right. Well, I really, one of the things I like about Michael so much is he straddles the worlds of the supernatural and the real, and you have no clue exactly where he fits. And I think he probably doesn't fit neither. I think that's part of what makes him so intriguing to people. He is unknowable ultimately, whether he's human or not human or some kind of combination. And I think that's what makes him a really interesting character and different from, other icons like Freddy and Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was Resident Evil that was the first novelization, right? I know you've also done... Right. I never know how to say the name of this movie. Is it XXX or is it just Triple X?
I have no idea. I usually in the movies themselves they say Triple X when they talk about like that designation for the spy program or whatever. So I usually just say Triple X, but I don't think it really matters.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And so those two, Halloween Kills, and what is the other one that I'm somehow just blanking on?
It was Kingsman, The Golden Circle.
Okay, so just looking at those film novelizations, they're really, really different genre. It's just like right off.
Yep.
So I mean, you have this slasher book, you have the Resident Evil book. I didn't see the movie, but I assume it's more like a post-apocalyptic action, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a spy one, and then you have XXX, which is how I'm going to say it, just because it sounds wrong, so it makes me laugh. Right. And that's also spy-ish, right?
Yeah, more action adventure.
Okay, so like
and kind of pulpy, maybe. Yeah.
So comparing that to the fiction, like the novels you write outside of tie-in stuff, like, have you written much action or spy fiction?
And not really any spy fiction, but usually when I do my own stuff, there's a certain level of action in it, and I've done some urban fantasy that's more, adventure-oriented than the kind of horror that I usually write.
Okay, so it probably wasn't too much of a challenge switching genres like that.
No, the biggest problem was trying to figure out like what the hell kind of weapons and cars and motorcycles and stuff these people will be using, because a lot of times the scripts don't tell you, and so and they don't give you, the studios don't give you anything other than a script, and so I scour the internet for any kind of pictures they release or any kind of footage that somebody is secretly filmed on their phone and uploaded, just so I can get some kind of idea what some of this stuff is. So it's weird to have to do research for something that you don't create in a way, but if it's not in the script, I got to figure it out.
So let's walk. I mean, maybe the process has been different with each one. I don't know. You can tell us. So let's
Yeah,
walk.
it has. It's been very different.
Let's walk through each of them then. Maybe you can tell us how that is. Like, I'm like just my assumption is you get the screenplay and you have to look around that without seeing the movie. Correct?
Right, but I did get to see Kingsman: The Golden Circle ahead of time. That's the only one that I saw ahead of time. Supposedly, I mean, I've heard all my life that, professional life, that this never ever happens to tie-in writers. When you do novelizations, you never ever ever get to see the movie. But the director, for some reason, decided I needed to see it before I wrote the book, so they flew me out to Hollywood, and they showed me the movie. I wasn't allowed to take a computer to write notes. The director wanted me to write every single thing. I mean, I never talked to him. I just found this out third hand or secondhand or whatever. But he wanted me to write down every single thing. So they literally stopped the movie every moment or two for me to write down everything I saw, write down the exact dialogue. It took like 9 hours to watch this movie. It was just, and I had only like 2 hours of sleep the night before because I had to get up early to, fly to LA, and I was like, so out of it. And then I left my notebook in the car of the gentleman who was the licensing head, because he was there. And he had to bring it back to me in the morning before I left my hotel.
You would be a terrible spy.
Yeah, it would be. It's terrible. But that's the only one where I got to see the movie.
Did you find that method helpful, or would you have preferred just to make the shit up?
It didn't really matter. That one was wild to write because it was just a bunch of things going wrong from the beginning. They gave my editor and me 2 different scripts, and we didn't know it. And so I wrote an entire book based on a script that was previous to hers, I think. And she was like, "What the hell is this?" And when I told her, she's like, "Okay, here's the script you're supposed to do." And so then I rewrote the whole thing. And then they had me go out to LA and see the movie. And that version was different too. And then I got back home and I'm like, now what the hell do I do? So I decided to just make it out of the best things I liked out of all 3 versions. And they were fine. They just let it go. And, I got to make some stuff up too, because it doesn't matter how long the scripts are. They're never long enough to fill up a novel. So there's a certain amount of stuff you have to create and, just be very careful that you're expanding stuff and adding stuff, but not like stretching things so far that they're going to, be upset or say no to.
Gotcha. Miguel?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so in that same vein, you're saying stretching things out or, expanding on things. I don't know how often you refer, or even if you did refer back to the original novelization of Halloween, because since it is in this timeline, but in that novelization, there is a scene before the movie starts about ancient druids and how this curse came down to the Myers family. So is that something that when you were writing your version of the book, you were able to create whole scenes and whole a canon, or did you have to stick very strictly?
Yeah, I would say I stuck more strictly to following the 2018 film, and then because since and then the original film too. But I didn't look at the original novelization. I did look at the novelization for Halloween 2, because Dennis Etchison wrote it under a wonderful, wonderful horror writer, but he wrote it as Jack Martin. And I wanted to see how he handled the scenes with Michael, so I could go ahead and get a sense of what's how to write from Michael's point of view. So I looked at that one. But in terms of following the canon, it was just the first film and then the 2018 film, and then I read the 2018 novelization and did my best to try to make it match some of the things that John Passarella added in there, as long as they weren't contradicted by the new script. I think in the novelization it says that the Myers house burned down years ago, and it's not giving anything away now that there's so many reviews of the movie and the movie's been out, that the Myers house is still fine and it's still there in Halloween Kills. So, I couldn't come up with an explanation for why it burnt down and it was still there. So I just went with the script that I had.
Yeah, I'll also say real fast, in the intro to this episode, I will tell folks, don't listen to this unless you've seen Halloween Kills, so we can spoil anything we want. That's fine.
Okay. except I can't tell you anything that's in my novelization until it comes out because I'm still under an NDA. I mean, I can hint or whatever, but I can't, talk about super specific stuff.
I do plan on releasing this when the book comes out. So does that change?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Then I can.
Okay, cool.
Sure.
Yeah, I thought it would be cool to release it the same week that the book comes out.
All right. Yeah, that would be fine then.
Okay, great.
I'm sure it's not a problem. Not that anybody at the studio pays any attention to what I do, and if I kept my mouth shut for a year and a half about the script, I doubt they're going to care if I say anything a couple days before the book comes out.
Yeah, I doubt anyone involved in that is listening to this podcast anyway. Maybe. I don't know.
You never know. Yeah, you never know.
I don't know. So going back to Resident Evil, how was the process for that book?
Well, they sent me the script. Usually they've all four of them have done the scripts differently. I think with that one, what I got was a printout from or photocopy from my editor in England. It just got sent to me. And so I had that, and that was it. Now I'd seen all the Resident Evil movies. I owned them all. And so I knew that the one right before the final chapter, which I think is number 5, it ends with the heroes and their main villain standing on top of, I think it's the Capitol building. Maybe it's the White House. I think it's the White House. And there's like a billion of these monsters everywhere they're converging on the White House. And so it's going to be the battle for all battles. And so when I got the script for the final chapter, it just begins with our hero. She just climbs out of a hole in the ground. There's nothing around anywhere. There's nobody else. There's no reference to what happens to this battle. And in the 5th movie, she ends up having kind of taking on like a mother role to this deaf girl that is a big character. And that girl shows up nowhere in the final chapter. And I'm just like, as a fan, I was like, this sucks. So I know that they don't really pay much attention from one movie to the other about the continuity. They don't really care. But I'm like, I'm going to write the what happens in between the two movies. So I wrote 60 pages of like a little book preface before the script even starts to talk about what happens in this giant battle and what happens to the little girl. And I thought for sure they were going to get mad at me, but they didn't care. They let me keep it. So, anything that I added to the book, they allowed me to keep. I made the bad guy a little bit, more menacing in the book because he wasn't that menacing in the movie like he should have been. I still followed up on what happened with the little girl and how the hero reconnects with her at the end of the movie or the end of the book, because it doesn't happen in the movie. And other than that, I looked for a lot of stuff online in terms of pictures and things so I could describe some scenes. And that helped me. Like, for example, in the script, they run into a group of survivors, our hero does, and they all have skull tattoos on their faces. But I could see from the images released to the internet that none of them did. So, I just was able to leave that out and try to match the movie as best I could. But overall, writing that one, it was a lot of fun. And the best part for me, though, was writing that extra 60-page mini book at the beginning, which people seem to appreciate. And I also read the previous novelizations so I could kind of keep in continuity with them as much as possible, too, just for the fun of it. I don't know if anybody would have cared except me. But so, yeah, that's the most I ever added, and nobody said a word about it. So.
Okay. Miguel, did you have any questions about the Resident Evil novelization?
No, not right now. No.
Are you a fan of Resident Evil, Miguel?
I saw the first one when it came out in theaters, and it was fine. I don't remember. I remember liking it, but I don't think I followed up on it. I never played the games because I didn't have a PlayStation.
Oh.
So it was just a movie to me.
Yeah. There's a new movie coming out next month that looks pretty damn good.
Yeah, I saw that trailer for it. It looks great, yeah. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah.
I do have some... Sorry, Max.
Feel free. Go ahead, Miguel. Just interrupt me. It's fine.
I do have, Tim, I do have questions about like writing in general.
Uh-huh.
I know you have your book, Writing in the Dark.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the origin of wanting to write a book to help like other authors get into like the horror business?
When I was probably 18 or 19 or so, my dad brought home, because I was still living at home then, And he brought home an issue of Writer's Digest, and I had no clue that this existed. I was just amazed there was a whole magazine for writers. And my dad just said, I think you might be interested in this. And that was it. And it was kind of cool because it was almost like my dad was saying, I think you could be a writer, a good writer, and kind of that gruff sort of, dads don't really communicate much sort of way. And so I sat on the porch. It must have been spring or something, or summer. And I sat on the porch and read that magazine cover to cover. And in there was a column on fiction written by Lawrence Block, really well known and just became even better known after that, mystery writer. And so I started reading his columns, and then I started reading his books. And then some of his older columns started getting collected into books. And he wrote a book on called Writing the Novel from Plot to Print. And, there's no Amazon back then, so I had to order it through mail by clipping out a little, thing out of Writer's Digest and filling it out and having them sending them a check. And I just fell in love with writing about writing. I thought it was so interesting. And eventually I started teaching writing too, is for my day job, just because I love teaching, but I loved writing as well. I wanted to be involved in it as many ways as I could. And so as the years went by, I just dipped my toe into writing an article here or there, like maybe for a website or for a small press magazine or something. And then just about 10 years ago, actually, I think it was 10 years ago last August, I started a blog, and I wasn't sure what to do, having a blog for promotional purposes, everybody said was a good idea. And I was talking at a convention with Jason Sizemore from Apex Books, and he said, you're a teacher, write about, writing. People will read that. And I said, well, okay. And so I started that blog, and, I wrote that for a long, long time. And I started doing presentations at workshops, workshops at like, StokerCon, places like that. World HorrorCon back in the day, and different things. And so just eventually over time, I had accumulated a lot of stuff. And then one year I was at Horror Hound back when Sam Hain Books was around. And I was trying to think of like what promotional material I could bring. People might, they might be interested in coming to see your books too. But I thought, what else could I bring? And so I wrote just like a short little handout about advice for writing horror. And people seemed to like that pretty well. And the other writers were like, wow, this is great. And so I went ahead and made that into a presentation. Then eventually I was just like, I think I would like to write a book. I think I got enough stuff about this. I think I've learned enough about horror. I enjoy talking about it so much. And it's just kind of, evolved that way.
Miguel, great question.
Yeah, sorry, I put myself on mute there. But I did have a follow-up. So you've
Sure.
been writing for over 30 years at this point, right?
Yep.
And what would you say has changed if anything has changed in horror fiction?
Well, there's a wider variety of approaches to it, maybe. Certainly there's a wider variety in the people who write it. The small press there wasn't really a small press back when I started. The small press now is really strong, and it's kind of the beating heart of horror, even with the resurgence of horror at, the bigger publishers these days. Still, it's the small press is where the heart of it's at. It seems like literary horror has become a lot more of a thing over the decades, where it's kind of like science fiction had done around the 80s, where it was starting to become respectable. Like people would start teaching it in college, or some of my professors would have like Neuromancer on their shelves or something. And I'd be like, oh, look at that. I guess science fiction isn't, a dirty word anymore in the academy. So I think that's starting to happen more with horror. The other big change that I think is probably occurring is happening, I think, just generationally. And that, the rise of self-publishing too, that's huge. But what I'm noticing and reading about is that people seem to want fiction that is less detailed. They find the details, not just like a bunch of details, like in something you'd read that was written 100 years ago, back before there was TV. So writers wrote everything, described everything, so we could imagine it, but very few details. And I wonder if that's part of the generation, and I don't mean like age, it's just could be any of us, whatever age we are now, that, with our media encourages really short types of communication, short text, short emails, short posts on social media, and Twitter can only be so long. And I'm wondering if that's becoming a thing where it's a whole new type of writing style. in a lot of ways. It might also come from, I don't know, I just suspect it might come from some self-publishing where people are writing shorter books and they're writing them faster one after the other as a marketing strategy. And if you write that fast, maybe you don't, take the time to put in as many details. It's a lot easier to go and write spare prose probably. So I don't know if that's going to keep up, but it's something that looks to me like a kind of a tidal shift that seems to be occurring. I've seen it in my students for years, but I'm starting to see it now. People talk about it on social media. Different writers do. I've seen editors and publishers talk about it, describe why it's better to. I've seen some posts and some articles by literary writers talking about why you want to not give the reader too much because the reader needs to be able the freedom to imagine a lot. And so it just makes me wonder if that's not going to be like a big shift in writing coming up.
That's pretty interesting because I've noticed the same thing in cinema where, back in the days, the scenes used to be 10, 15 seconds and then they would cut. Or, and nowadays a scene is like 6 or 7 seconds and then they cut. They just do jump shots. And I wonder if it's the same way because our attention spans is so far, it was so less than what it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why I think that the Paranormal Activity movies just drive people nuts in terms of suspense, because they just the scenes go on so long and nothing happens for a long time. And these are people that are used to having complete control of their technology and making it do whatever they want exactly when they want it. And they have to sit in the theater or at home or whatever, and they have no control over this damn story. They just have to sit and wait and wait. And whenever I've watched them in the theater, I mean, especially the younger people, oh my God, you can just feel the tension pouring off of them. So it was really interesting because to me, they're really boring. I'm just waiting for a damn pot to fall off in the kitchen. It takes an hour. And I'm like, oh my God. And then there's like one scary thing for 3 seconds at the end. And I'm like, really? Why did I sit through this whole thing? But it's fun to watch with an audience.
Yeah, I do think there's a certain type of, I guess, binge mentality that's happened with the way people consume media. Like, I'm thinking especially of TV shows. I hate the word binge so much when it comes to entertainment, but it's mostly how people describe the way they experience it. But it's the same reason why, like, say Netflix quickly fast forwards through the credits, or you get the option to skip the intro because they know the audience has no attention span now, and if you lose them for 1 second, then they give up and they go to the next thing. I mean, you have as like writers have to think about that too when they are putting something out, right? I mean, there's 1,000 books put out like every week, and like one false sentence is what's stopping them from going to the other 1,000th book that came out this week.
Right. I mean, they've always, at least my entire career, talked about how to keep, readers moving from chapter to chapter, from scene to scene, how to hook them early and keep them hooked. But, they didn't talk about how to make sure nobody puts your book away and goes to the billion other entertainment options available to them that aren't just books. There's everything you could possibly want to entertain yourself.
Yeah, we were just drowning in entertainment. I mean, you have so many options. You can go listen to a podcast. You can do that's the only other thing I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
you
can
watch
video.
Yeah, I mean TikTok. I mean that thing is an infinite abyss of videos that you can just watch for a decade. I don't know how many videos are on TikTok. I don't think anyone counts.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's just probably millions, and that's all anybody knows.
Tim, if we can go back a bit. So you said when we were talking about, horror movies and creating suspense, drawing the scenes out forever. In horror, when you're writing that nowadays to the audiences that you're seeing now, how do you create suspense in your writing?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to, if things are really changing and people want less detail, I'm not quite sure how to do that. But the basic technique that I still use is that it's really kind of counterintuitive. You basically let people know something bad is coming. Your character doesn't know. And then what you do is you focus on details that kind of delay whatever it is, like Paranormal Activity in a lot of ways. It's like the written equivalent of that. You just don't draw it out for an hour and a half. You draw it out for maybe a few paragraphs or a page or two. So what happens is that if people know, like they're anticipating something bad coming, they actually increase their reading speed to get to it faster. And so whatever you write, the details that you have in between, they have to race through them to get there. And that kind of reading pace, that kind of experience helps build the tension and suspense. You can also do it by creating atmosphere and the language that you use, and, staying like really closely immersed into the character's point of view. So we're right there with them for what they're thinking and feeling and seeing. So all those things can work really well to increase suspense. But the biggest part is that usually the reader, or if it's a movie, the viewer, they have a higher point of view, a higher perspective. They know, like kind of like a god, we know something bad is coming, where the character may not. And little by little, the character may become aware, but they don't know the way we know. And so all that stuff helps create suspense.
I love that you came on this podcast with this anti-paranormal activity crusade that you had to give out. I have no opinions about the movies myself, but I love that you came on just like, you know what? Fuck those movies. I'm going to make sure everyone knows I hate them. It's really funny.
But lots of people love them, and I don't begrudge them at all just because they're not to my taste. But watching, like I said, though, watching the one I saw, my daughter was with me. And when she was younger, she's probably a teenager back then. She's 26 now. But it was a really great movie experience to watch it with people. That was great. But I'm not going to I don't own any of them. I own like almost every horror movie I can get my hands on. I don't own a Paranormal Activity movie because I'm never going to watch one of those again.
Would you write a novelization of one?
Yeah, sure. I try. And I try my best to create the same sort of feeling the movies do, and add something to it to make it really cool as a novel. I don't know what I do, but yeah, I try.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and skip to Halloween Killed, since we've already run through half the time, and I would love just to spend the rest of this episode talking about this project. If you could talk about like when you were approached to do the project and like how that all came together, I would love to know about that.
Yeah, I'd already done the 3 novelizations for Titan, and they'd come to me and asked about a couple others that for whatever reasons they ended up going with somebody else. So they just approached my agent and said, do you think Tim would be interested in Halloween Kills? And I had already was like jealous of John Passarella because he got to do the previous movie. And I was like, I so wish I could go ahead and write Michael. Michael's like one of my favorites. It was the first horror movie that I introduced my oldest daughter to. So she's like a huge Michael fan. And so I was thrilled when my agent told me that they were interested in having me do it. And so when I was, really excited to get the script. And, I did the same thing I normally do when I get a script is I go through and I read the whole thing, beginning to end. And then I type up all the dialogue because all the dialogue has to stay. So I type it up. And then I kind of fit in the rest of the book around it. It's the only time I do anything like that. But it works really well. I read through the script a second time. I go through and I look for places where, is there something where I could like add more? Like, is there, have they skipped over developing a character somewhere that I could develop? Is there a scene where, like in Halloween, the Kills, there's another escaped mental patient that, people mistake for Michael at one point. And there's not much in the movie about him. There's more about him in the script, and I added even more about him in the book to make him a more developed character.
Oh, good.
Drew on some stuff that was in John Passarella's book about him too, that may or may not have been in the first script for the 2018 one. I haven't seen that script, but there was a little bit because that character was in the yard with Michael when those the reporters from their blog or whatever come in to talk to him. He's one of the people that's standing around there, and so he was described in that. His particular pathology. He's like is obsessed with string and ropes and things like that. And so I came up with a whole big reason why he was like that. I had a great time writing that poor guy.
Oh, that's awesome. Watching the movie, it did feel like he had a much more important role in the movie that was just cut because he's only in like the like one scene where we think it's Michael and then it turns out to be him, and then he's in the hospital scene. I think that's it, right? In this,
Right.
yeah. String. I don't recall seeing anything in the movie about a obsession with string.
Yeah, it wasn't anywhere in there. But like I said, it was in the first novelization, or the one of the 2018 one. And so I went ahead and just built on that. And that was a lot of fun, for that being his weird obsession. And because he was in the prison with Michael, he had to be a killer. I knew that, because there's no way they'd have him in there on that same, transport with Michael. He wouldn't be from the same place. So I knew he was a killer as well. So he was, they don't portray him as dangerous at all in the movie. But there's a certain, danger to him that it's in there too. And hopefully, people still feel sorry for him, given what happens. The hardest thing about him was the fact that in the script anyway, it looks like the people, like the Haddonfield survivors, the ones who had survived Michael's attacks or whatever, that they wouldn't know what he looks like, because there would be pictures of him. Even if there weren't like reporters that were allowed to see him, staff would take their cell phones and sneak pictures of him. He would be on the internet. People would know exactly what he looked like.
Expanding on that, in the movie itself, I mean, they're watching a what the hell breaking news clip on the TV at the Bill, and they show the mugshots of Michael. Like, the camera kind of loses focus.
Right.
But suddenly they don't know what he looks like, and also they confuse him with a man who's like 3 feet shorter than him. Right.
Well, when I watched the movie, I liked the fact that Anthony Michael Hall's character never got a clear look at him. You can tell that he tries to look, and the people block him. So I can believe, like a lot of the other people in town that probably aren't that obsessed with Michael might not know, or just caught up in the moment, might not even think, this guy can't be Michael. He's just, he's too short, or, he's too heavy or whatever. So yeah, I had to find ways around that. And I think they didn't have me cut it out. So I must've done just fine. I can't remember if the script, because it's been a year and a half since I read it. I can't remember if it says that they show his picture on there. I think it does say that they have the picture on the TV report. And plus, in the script, it's a big screen TV. It's not like this little one over the bar. So Michael's face would be huge in this bar for everybody to see. And I think it just says that they weren't looking at that moment when it flashed, like, as an excuse for why they wouldn't recognize it. I'm like, no, there's no way in hell. There's websites devoted to Michael. There are books devoted to Michael. They would know.
Yeah, think of any like true crime, any true crime obsessive.
Right.
It would be all over the place. Everyone would know what he looks like.
Right. And he might not be as big a deal in the overall world, that world, as he would be here, but you'd find him on the internet. You'd find sites devoted to him. Especially for the people that had survived him, who were obsessed, for one ways or other, traumatized. They would know what he looked like. They would know. Lori would know. And you saw it like in the movie when her daughter, she pulls Michael's mask off. She doesn't look surprised to see him at all. There's no shock of, oh, this is what Michael looks like. And Lori sees his face, and so do we in the very first movie, the 1978 version. It was one of my favorite moments the first time. I'll never forget it, because I just didn't think they'd show his face. And of course, his eye isn't hurt at that point. I think his eye should be bleeding. But just to see that he was just a regular guy underneath that, it was so cool. And then to have him almost like be deactivated when the mask was off of him, and then he pulled it back on and kept going. That was something in the script that was hit a little bit harder than they did in the movie. Was that he was, when the mob is after him and his mask is off, he's deactivated almost at that point until he can get the mask back.
What do you mean by deactivated? Like he's just lying there and taking what they're doing to him. Mm-hmm. In the movie, they're beating him up while he has his mask on, and maybe that's just because they realized they didn't want to film it for us seeing his face or whatever. But in the script, yeah, the mask is off, and he is like, until he can get his hands on it again, because that's when he jumps up and slaughters everybody, is when he gets his face back. That's how I described it. When he got his face back, then he was Michael again, or the Shape. On all the novelizations, they always call him the Shape, and even though I always think of him as Michael
in the book, in the scenes for him. I called him the Shape 2 just to kind of stay in continuity with all that.
Do you think if you had filled in that book in every reference of Michael Myers, you called him Big Mike, would they have been mad?
I am sure of it. Because one of the small things I did was they didn't care about the stuff I added. They didn't like that I changed some of the dialogue. And some of the dialogue I changed because I couldn't make sense out of it, just in context of the scene. But most of it were things like if you have a character that would shout no like 3 times in a row or just say it 3 times in a row in one line of dialogue, you can't reproduce that on the page. An actor can say those no's with very different tones and very different body language. So I'm like, I'll just have it be one no. And I got a note from them back that says all the dialogue has to be exactly the way it's in the script. And I'm like, that's the one thing you want? I mean, it's okay for me to add the other stuff.
But I can also... Can you add dialogue to like...
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
You just can't change.
I couldn't change. Yep, they didn't want me to change anything. And that was all right. But that was the only thing that they had me do. I tried because of and the film does it more than the script, but at the end they kind of lean in a little bit into this, is Michael supernatural or not? So they had that in the script, and so I leaned into it a little bit more, and they said, no, pull that back. It was only a couple sentences here or there, but they said, pull that back. We don't want that. And then they ended up doing a little heavier in the movie, I think, or it just comes across that way. Really, there's the weird thing about this movie is that for all the other ones I've done, there's a ton that's cut out of the scripts, mostly character stuff. You know, people always complain that like action movies, venture movies, they don't have any characterization. All the scripts I've seen, they have all that stuff. The writers put all of it in, and it all gets yanked out. Probably because there's just no room by the time you film all the action and everything, or they just think it slows the movie down. But I was really surprised to watch the movie, and everything that was in the scripts there's hardly any difference between them.
What would you say the difference is at all?
In the script, the ending goes on just a touch longer. It doesn't change anything in the slightest in terms of the way it ends, other than just, it's a little extra. I had read a interview with the director who said, we changed the ending at the last minute. It's not an ending, it's in the script. And I was like, oh my God, does that mean my book's going to end really different? And then I saw the ending and I'm like, oh, it ends earlier, slightly earlier than the script does. And they might have tweaked one little thing a little bit. Him looking at his reflection, they might have hit that a little harder. I can't remember. I don't have a copy of my book yet. That hasn't showed up yet. So I was going to flip to the end and just see, exactly where they cut it, just to kind of refresh my memory. But really, it was about it. Almost everything else was in there. There's stuff in the script that's just not in there. Like I said, they had a little bit more about the other escaped mental patient, but there wasn't anything that was changed. I was actually afraid they were going to cut out the 2 Johns, because I was like, this is just like all this character stuff. They're fun characters. That's got to be the stuff they're going to pull right out. Or I would think sometimes like the dialogue between Laurie's neighbors, the husband and wife, and they're just kind of bantering a little bit. I'm like, oh, they're going to cut that out for sure. But all that stuff stayed in the movie. And I was like, that's awesome. That's
really cool though. Like they didn't cut anything like significant at all. Like even the movie I built on, it was always first, let's cut the things that slow it down. But of course, those were the things that made the kill believable. Right.
And I've been reading a lot of reviews since it came out, and there, a lot of people are talking about how there's just so much going on in there, and for a novel, that's great. It lends itself really well to a novel. But I can see what people mean about having so many different story threads. The thing about my wife when I watched it, and she had never seen, she hadn't seen it. She didn't read the book or the script or whatever, so she didn't know anything about the movie. But I told her the weird thing is that I've known this story for a year and a half. Everybody else has just seen it. So I can't have an initial reaction to any of this stuff. Even my other novelizations, it was only a few months between the time I wrote it when they came out, but because this one got, put on hold for a year. So when I try to think about the story and think, is it good the way it's set up? Could it be better? It's just, in my mind, it's like already, firmed up as this is the story of Halloween Kills, and I don't even imagine it any other way.
Yeah, Tim, so you said that you've had it for like a year and a half or whatever. So I had a question for you about that. In the hospital scene with the other escaped convict, myself and a bunch of other people who have already seen the movie and have been discussing it, it felt like that was like a January 6th reference. Like
Nope.
everybody going crazy. No, okay,
Nope.
all right.
That's completely coincidental. You know how sometimes something will happen in the real world and it seems to echo something that's in a movie. Like at 9/11, a lot of TV shows and movies pulled anything that, you know, had to do with terrorism or just a building coming down. But yeah, I mean, there's no way that film, they could have, even if they were filming it around that time, they probably would have locked filming before it had happened. So
Yeah, because I was thinking like I know that horror has always been political and I love that, but specifically the Halloween movies have kind of stayed away from that. And
right.
when I was watching it this time, I was like, wow, this is so poignant. Like, how did they do this so quickly? But you're saying it was completely coincidental, which is just crazy.
Yeah, they were purposely doing the whole, you know, mob thing and, you know, that what kind of effect would a killer have on this kind of town, especially if it's, you know, been legend for 40 years or whatever. You know, all of that was in there. And people complain about the character saying evil dies tonight. They say it a lot more in a script.
Okay.
I was like, do I really have to put that in again? But no, I mean the hospital scene was with the other character. You know, it's exactly the way it was in the script.
So when January 6th happened, were you like, wow, it's just like the movie or the script that I'm writing or the book that I'm writing, or was it already completed at that point? Or?
Oh no, it was already completed. I finished it in March of 2020.
Okay.
I wrote it in 3 weeks, and I had COVID during that time too.
Okay, wow. Expand on that.
Yeah, you know, COVID was just suddenly a thing. And my wife went on a trip up to Cleveland with a friend who was super sick. And then she came back and we both got sick. And I don't usually get sick. And she teases me because if I get a cold, she says it lasts like, you know, 8 hours. And I was really sick. And we figured we probably had it. So our doctor, there were no tests or anything at the time. So my doctor just told us, you know, just stay home for 14 days. And they had already closed my school down for a month to try to figure out what the hell to do, you know, the college where I teach. So yeah, I was able to keep myself occupied real well. It was pretty physically miserable. You know, we were sick, really sick, but not so sick that we ever had to go near a hospital, and not so sick that we were incapacitated. So we were pretty lucky. My wife has a lot of like lung stuff, so she actually had like a machine that gives you breathing treatments. Like medicine directly into your lungs. And the doctor told us to do that. And we did that several times a day. And I think that probably helped a lot. So yeah, it was really weird an experience to go through it like that. But I guess the book turned out okay. People have to read it and see if it's, if writing while under COVID, it produces better text or worse text, I guess, than other methods.
What are you gonna
recommend it?
What are you gonna do if that's like the best writing you can do? It's like, I have to keep getting COVID now.
Yeah, I'll just live with it. I'm just hoping I don't have like long haul COVID that makes like my mememory messed up or.
Yeah.
Because
Tim, you've already said that.
Yeah. Oh no. don't joke. I might have. But yeah, I've noticed that I will those in my writing, there are different kinds of mistakes and typos that are showing up. I think my wife says they're exactly the same. So. And then I tell her, well, that's my symptom of long haul, is that I can't remember my typos. So far, so good. I've written several books since then. So
you said you wrote this in 3 weeks. Was that a requirement by Titan?
Almost. I think they gave me a month.
Okay. Sometimes
that happens, just depending, especially with the novelizations. But, you know, you already have a script, so that makes it a lot easier.
I can see that, yeah. It's so crazy to me. You only get like a month to write these things. Like, why are they waiting so long?
Yeah, you know, usually if it's like an original tie-in where you're doing an original adventure like the Supernatural Brothers, you might get 3 or 4 months to do that, which is still not a ton of time, but it's still a lot more than, you know, a month.
So I'm pretty curious about like the whole act of writing novelizations. I've never done it. I am interested in maybe one day doing it. But I have to wonder, like, not naming any specific project, but like, how do you handle getting a screenplay and possibly not liking it? And like, do you still do the project? And if so, like, how do you kind of cope with writing a novelization of a screenplay that isn't really interesting to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think so far that's happened. because once I get a script, I imagine it as what I'm going to do with it to make a book. So I don't think of it so much as a movie. I do try to think of it cinematically so I can kind of recreate that experience too. But when I got the script for, Triple X, The Return of Xander Cage, and I'd watched the first movie in the theater, really liked it, saw the sequel too, which didn't have Xander Cage in it, but so I was versed enough in that world. But the very first page starts with, the bad guys in this movie, they have a weapon that can drop satellites wherever they want, yank them out of orbit and just drop it anywhere. And I was like, those damn things burn up before they hit anything. You can't really use it as a weapon. And I think the first page of the script talks about a satellite being like 3 miles above the Earth's surface, and I'm like, that's not orbit. So I had to go research all this stuff and change the science of it and things like that. And so occasionally, and I had to come up with excuses why at least some of the satellite debris would actually hit somewhere and not be burned up in the atmosphere. Nobody cared that I changed that kind of stuff if they even noticed. So things like that'll happen where I'm like, I have to try to make this believable or sell it somehow. If it's just like silly sort of, like action adventure stuff that, a real person could not survive. Like Michael should long be dead. Or, like any regular human being, we could slip and break our leg, and that's the end of our adventure. We're in the hospital getting our leg fixed. We're not going to keep going. So there's a certain amount of suspension of disbelief people will do. I don't feel the need to fix that stuff, but sometimes I have read like the parts of the script where I'm like, this is kind of disappointing. All 4 of them by coincidence were sequels to other films that I'd seen. So, sometimes I'll be like, I'd hope this would have gone a different way, or this is kind of weird. Okay, fine. I'll just go with it. Just like you would do if you watch the sequel, to anything. It's not the first film, and the filmmakers are going to make different choices than you probably would have if you made it. So, I have moments like that, but I haven't had a moment where I just thought this script is this is awful, but I'll do the best I can with it. That hasn't happened yet.
Do you have scenes in the upcoming Halloween Kills novelization from the point of view of Big Mike?
Sure. I think there are scenes from both of them. Sorry. I thought you meant like Big John. You said Big Mike. Yeah, I've got scenes from...
I apologize.
That's okay. And I was reading today, people are thinking that's a reference to their penis size. And I was just like, I just thought both of their names were John. And that was just their way of, teasing each other about their height because it was kind of opposite,
That's what I assumed.
Yeah, because I had a friend in high school whose name was Tim. So I was used to, we hung out all the time. So I was just used to being around people with the same name. And I'm like, I was telling my wife at dinner tonight about it. And I'm like, I don't remember anybody saying John as a euphemism for a penis. I mean, there was Johnson a long time ago, like in the 70s, maybe. Maybe they still do in Britain. I don't know. But yeah, I have a number of scenes from Michael's point of view. Those are my favorite scenes to write. I really hope people like them.
So what was that like? Sorry, Max, but I've been wanting to ask. What was it like? What was it like getting into or having to get into the mind of Michael Myers in order to write him?
Yeah, it's a balancing act because you want to be able to be in his perspective while at the same time you can't be in his perspective. He might not even have one. I mean, who the hell knows? He does do things like in the first movie, the 1978 one, where he stages tableaus and, like he's got his sister's headstone on the bed with, I forget which one it is. PJ Soul's probably laid out there, and he pretends to be a ghost at one point. He has the guy's glasses over the ghost sheet. So, that kind of implies a certain degree of awareness and intelligence. Like, so he's not just like a mindless monster, but most of the time he seems like a mindless monster. So, you don't want to go too far into his head. So I treated him kind of like if I was writing about a shark, where I wrote mostly about like stimulus and then his response to it, like a stimulus that he would notice and then what he would do. Sharks are what they do. They don't think or feel or plan. And so I did it that way. And then just did a little touch farther into his point of view, but not too far. So that was one of the things that actually calling him the shape helped doing, because he thought of himself, and at least the way I wrote the scenes, kind of, I imagined him thinking of himself as a shape, as something that moved and did things and existed, but didn't think exactly. And it really helped a lot. And it had helped that I'd written a couple of creature feature novels for a small press where I already had to do that for like, the dinosaurs munching people, where I tried to give them characters without giving them characters. So I'd already had some practice at doing something like that. And it helped looking over how like John Passarella wrote him and how Dennis Etchison did, and the novelization for Halloween too. So yeah, hopefully I'll be interested to see what people think of those scenes. Hopefully they won't think that I did a terrible job.
I find it really funny imagining a book written in Phil Spilson through Michael's point of view. Like, I can't even imagine how that would go. Like, until I was minding my own business.
Right. Nobody understands me.
I haven't read the 2018 novelization, but I would love to know how John wrote this scene where Michael shoves a flashlight into a decapitated head to make it look like a jack-o'-lantern. Because I suspect Michael found that really funny, and he was quite excited to see how someone would react to that. Like, he must have been so fucking pumped.
Well, Max, you're in luck. I have the novelization in my hands right now, and I can read it back to you.
Please do.
No, just kidding. I do have the novelization in my hand, but I won't read it back.
Yeah, but things like that do argue that Michael has a certain kind of awareness and maybe a sense of humor, or that maybe he knows, because if he puts these things out for people to stumble across, he is trying to scare them. He's not just wandering around killing people mindlessly. He's trying to get a reaction from people, unless he does it for his own reasons and it's just like an accident that people see it and get scared, that it doesn't even occur to him. I mean, who knows? That's just part of the cool mystery about him. I don't ever want that kind of mystery to be solved.
He is a practical prankster. That is what he is. He loves a good prank.
Well, it's Halloween. It's a trick, right?
I found it really funny, like with Halloween Kills, after seeing the movie, thinking about Michael Myers killing Big John and Little John, and then setting them up in his tableau, and then going through their record collection for just the right song to play,
right?
So that, and then he has to know how to use a record player. I mean, he's multi-talented, is all I'm trying to say. But
he's doing this with a mask on.
Along the same lines about getting in the head of Michael Myers, what was it like getting in the head of Dr. Loomis? Because he does make a really big cameo appearance in this movie.
Yeah, I was so excited. I was so excited to get to write Dr. Loomis. I don't know if I write it from his point of view or not. I probably did, because I couldn't have resisted it. I know I would have wanted to. I just don't remember, because the scene itself, it's so important what's going on in the one police officer's head during that scene. So I may have just stayed in his point of view the whole time. I can't remember. But yeah, I was just excited that I got to write a book that had, Loomis in it.
I know we're already past time, so I'll quickly just close this up. But before I do, get your social media tags and whatnot, I would love to know, what did you think? When you saw the movie, I mean, it's been in your head how long? And you finally you sit down, you watch it. I mean, what are your feelings about it?
Yeah, it's every time I've watched a movie after I've novelized it, they go by so fast, because the script, you read it more slowly. I'm thinking about it. When I write the scenes, I'm describing a bunch of stuff, so the writing of it doesn't go fast like that. And it's almost like they're sped up, like they're on fast forward. So it's just a strange experience. But this one was strange because it was so much. It was the script. I mean, it was not significantly different. So I was able to predict every single thing that was going to happen. I still remembered the basics, and I was waiting for just something to veer off in a different direction, and it really didn't. And so that was, kind of what you might expect, but it didn't happen with the other movies. I was able to say, oh, they didn't do this, or they changed that, or they added this, or they cut this. So overall, I really enjoyed the experience of it. It's cool because I'm the only person on earth that can experience it from that point of view. I'm the only person that wrote the novelization, so I'm the only one that gets to watch, when I do one, I'm the only one that gets to watch a movie like that, but I don't get to watch it like everybody else. You do a novelization, I give up. You give up being able to watch a movie for the first time without knowing anything about it.
Miguel, did you have any final questions you were dying to ask?
Just one real quick is I see behind you there that you have quite a collection of pop vinyl figurines. Is there anything else you collect besides them, or is that something you enjoy collecting?
I like the pops just because they're, especially the horror ones, because they're so ridiculous. They have the silly little innocent things, but they're also creepy with their black eyes. So I like that. But I have figures like on the over my right shoulder over there is a bunch of Godzilla figures, and and I got some like pops that are of writers and things like that, and I got a ton of Michael figures back there somewhere. I bought a bunch of them so I'd have them around my. I already had a couple, but I bought more so I'd have them around the computer while I was writing. So I had them all here. So I had plenty of Michaels helping me when I was writing the book.
That's great. And just one last question. I'm sorry, but how does it feel to now, having seen the movie originally when it came out in 1978, to now being part of the universe, or somebody who helped bring that into life? How does it feel?
Yeah, it's something that 14-year-old me could not have possibly believed. I mean, I've had a chance to do Halloween. I wrote an original Alien novel. I got to write an original Nightmare on Elm Street novel a long time ago. And just being able to be part of that is just not something that I could have imagined back then would ever happen. So it's really, really cool just to be even a small part of the legacy of these properties.
Thank you very much for your time.
I can't believe we didn't even talk about the fucking Nightmare on Elm Street book. Oh, you'll have to come back on eventually, and we can talk about that, because I totally meant to bring it up. But look how quick this episode went by. Thank you for doing this, man. This was a ton of fun. How can folks find you online?
You can just go to my website. It's just timwaggoner.com, and it has links to all my social media and everything. Any place you'd want to find me, you can find me from there.
Excellent. Now, before we go, can you please tell the audience the original ending of Halloween Kills? The ending they don't want you to know about.
No, I don't. Read my book. Go buy the book and you find out. But really, it's nothing. Honest to God, I'm afraid that that's going to be the special ending that they're going to release on the Blu-ray with the director was talking about. He's like, there's an entirely new ending. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like 30 to 40 seconds of footage that doesn't change a thing. It's exactly the same ending, just, slightly done differently. But it is, I have heard from people that it is in the leaked script online.
Yeah.
Because somebody asked me about it.
I was referring to the tweet you posted the other day.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yes, that Michael. I don't even remember what I said. Michael. It turns out that Laurie was Michael all along. So yeah, that's what it was. It's like High Tension, where we find out that the woman is really the killer all along. She doesn't know it.
Miguel,
that's the actual ending. That's the ending that they didn't want you to see.
Miguel, be honest. What would you have done if that was how the movie ended?
If Laurie was in fact the killer?
Yeah.
I probably would have cried. I don't know. I had no idea. My head would have exploded. I don't know.
Or it's like one of these things where like Michael takes off his mask and him and Laurie are in cahoots, and they have been for like 40 years.
And they just point at each other and they're like,
Right. And that's why he never gets hurt, because she doesn't ever really stab him. She's got like one of those prop knives that just squirts blood but doesn't really hurt anybody.
Oh my God!
It's just like Three Stooges.
Right.
You get one of those scenes like in Fight Club when he realizes it's been him, just like stabbing himself in the parking lot.
Right.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you, Miguel.
Thanks for having me. It's a great time.
This has been great. Have a great day. And that was Tim Waggoner talking about Hulu movie novelizations with my special co-host, Miguel Myers. Go check both of those things out. Support them. Buy the books. Listen to the podcast. Be a good pal. Go subscribe to my newsletter, my Substack, at theghoulish.substack.com. Review the podcast Ghoulish on iTunes. Leave a review, a rating and a review. That would be great. And go buy some books at perpetualpublishing.com, baby. Go do it. Do the thing that I'm telling you to do. I am the voice in your head, and you will listen to me, god damn it!
Rest in peace, Max.